day buried tonight here at this most remarkable facility. My name is Untitled Chapter. On behalf of all of us at Books and Books, we want to thank Pastor Lori Hafner and all the members of the congregation here for opening their doors and letting us in. So let's give them a big round of applause. You should really find out what's going on at this church. They have things all during the summer, and it's really kind of a remarkable community institution. I would also like to think, we love to partner with lots of different wonderful organizations in town. And I don't know about you, I may not be the only male subscriber to this, but there may not be that many. But there's this remarkable thing called Just Ask Boo. How many of you know about it? Yeah. And this is Boo Zanuck, who's right over here, and her team. And they have helped us co-sponsor this evening tonight. And they really provide another great community service as well. I've learned about all kinds of things, what to do with how to boil nipples, or how to find babysitters. I hope, thankfully, no longer need. But I can also find $3.1 million houses if I want to as well. I'm just asking. Anyways, thank you, Boo, and thank you guys for helping us do this tonight. We also are blessed here at Coral Gables with an institution that, I've lived here long enough, and we've been in business now over 32 years, so I've seen a lot of these guys come and go. I've been a member of the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce for lots of years, but there's nobody who's made a bigger impact on this city than Mark Trowbridge. And Mark is the executive director of the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce. He really cares so much about this community and so much about small business and keeping Coral Gables, what I like to say, weird and different and strange, but also with a sense of it differentiates itself from just about every other community in South Florida. So to introduce Dave, it's my pleasure to bring out Mark Trowbridge. Please welcome.
We'll lose that 1 Corinthians 13 for the morning. Good evening and welcome to tonight's very special presentation by a community treasure, AARP member, a true believer, devoted father, Pulitzer Prize winner, humorist, and author, Mr. Dave Barry. As Mitchell said, I should clap for that. As Mitchell said, I'm Mark Trowbridge. I'm the president of our Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce here. Our chamber celebrates 90 years of serving the Coral Gables community next year. And for more than 30 of those, our dear friends at Books and Books have been a major part of Coral Gables. And we pay tribute to Mitchell Kaplan and his team at Books and Books for making us more well-read, more interesting people to talk to at cocktail parties, more intelligent than other members of our family, and certainly more successful than people who live outside Miami County. Tonight it's my pleasure to be with you as we welcome Dave Barry out to the City Beautiful. His latest work is You Can Date Boys When You're 40, Dave Barry on Parenting and Other Topics, which offers a fresh look at Dave's role as a parent. Now, this is the first time that Dave has opined on his unique parental duties and mentioned skill set, but it's good to know that other topics are broached in his new book as well. A collection of essays that are typically Barry-esque. Dave is still in recovery from having taken his daughter Sophie to a Justin Bieber concert recently. Now, following his own parenting advice, he has lightened up, come to terms that as a boy or a former boy, he is pure scum, and now has set about creating a new industry, building boy traps for potential suitors of Sophie. As always, Dave's delicious bright side and unique viewpoint on the ever-changing worldly and habit, especially in Miami and Florida, keep us smiling and satiated. And as you heard us say, you just cannot make some of this stuff up. Thankfully, his latest book continues his tradition of truth-telling while embracing reality. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of our chamber and Books and Books, please give them a warm, cordial welcome, Mr. David Barry.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mitchell and Books and Books, which is the best bookstore in the United States and probably the world. And Boo, also thanks to Boo. Anyway, I'm going to get to my book in a minute, but this has been kind of a strange week for me. I started a book tour on Sunday in New York, and I came down the coast, and I was in Atlanta last night. And today, it's kind of the ridiculous to the sublime. Last night I gave a talk to an audience very much like this one at the Jimmy Carter Center in Atlanta. Very nice facility, very nice place. Tonight I'm here, it's beautiful, you're all here, it's a wonderful night. This afternoon at 1 o'clock, I did a book signing at the Costco in Boca Raton. I don't know if you've ever been to the Costco, but it is everything you might imagine it would be. And they set me up at a table in the middle of it's gigantic. It's the size of Connecticut, and I'm, sitting next to like 55-gallon barrels of Cheetos, and they have a big thing with my book. And these people come by, these Costco Boca Raton people pushing carts, like giant stacks of things. And early on, this woman, older lady. I mean, when I say older, that's really old because I'm fairly old myself. With eyebrows painted like here, kind of glares at me like she's already angry. She's got her cart. She's right in front of me, parked in front of me, and she goes, "Are you going to do a book talk?" And I go, "No, I'm just signing books here. I'm going to be talking later tonight, but I'm just signing here." She goes, "The paper said you were going to do a talk." And she's really angry at me now. And I go, "No, I'm sorry. I'm just doing a signing. I'm not really set up for it. It's a Costco. There's not really just doing a signing here." Then there's a pause, and she goes, "Well, the paper said you were going to do a talk." And then she put her merchandise away. And then another guy came. This is an older gentleman, and he comes up. And again, they all appear angry at me. And he looks at the book, and the title of the book is "You Can Date Boys When You're 40," which is a joke about my daughter. And he goes, "I don't understand. What does that mean?" And so I said, "Well, I'm a humorist. It's humor essays, and the first one is I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I'm basically saying you can date boys when you're 40." And he goes, "Saying it to who?" And I go, "My daughter." And he goes, "Ah!" and walks. And at this point I had protection from the store manager, a guy named Larry, who was standing next to me the whole time, which I felt reassured. But then the assistant manager came up to Larry and said that the door handles had been broken off the handicapped bathroom. And so Larry had to take off on that emergency. So I was there for an hour and a half. I signed maybe 4 books. When I came out, the publisher provided a driver because I had to get from Lauderdale up to there and then down to here. And the driver's in the parking lot, and he goes, "This place is crazy." I said, "What do you say?" Like, "People are fighting over a parking space. People take it so serious, the parking space here." So anyway, I'm glad to be here. That's my point. Really happy to be. I know people think this area is crazy, but it's no Boca Raton. I'll tell you that right now. So anyway, I'm going to talk about the book. The title is a little bit misleading because it suggests that the whole book is about parenting, which is really not the case. I had suggested some other titles that might have covered more ground. These are actual titles I proposed to the publisher. Dave Barry's Vague General Book of Humor Topics, which could really cover any book I've ever written. Dave Barry's Guide to Whatever This Book Is About. This is the branding one. Dave Barry, a Dave Barry book by Dave Barry. And the one that I really someday we're going to do, I propose this every year. Dave Barry, I bet you thought he was dead. So anyway, this is a little awkward because I'm going to talk about the book, and it happens that the subject of the first essay is Sophie, my daughter, who happens to be here tonight. This is the first time Sophie's heard me talk about this book, so I'll have to tread carefully. But anyway, I have a son, an older son, and I have Sophie, and my son's grown up gone. Sophie is now 14. So I've seen puberty, and we need to find a cure. But it's different, boys and girls. Boys, they basically become larger, hairier, smellier boys. But they're still boys, okay? Like, let's be honest, men are nothing more than large, hairy, smelly boys. Girls is very different. It's a radical transformation. They become this entirely new species after that. And a number of things happen. Many of them are social. Sophie is connected electronically, as far as I can tell, to every other 14-year-old girl in the world. They're all on the phone connected through things, Snapchat and Instagram and texting and stuff, and they all emit updates every 10 to 15 seconds, or take photographs of themselves so all of their friends can see that they haven't changed too much since the last selfie came through. So there's not a lot of eye contact anymore between me and Soph. She can't, if she were to look away from her phone to talk to me for like 5 seconds, she can miss like 80 or 90 things. So she tends to keep her head down, and our conversations tend to revolve around things like, would you rather have Cinnamon Toast Crunch this morning or Fruity Pebbles? That's kind of as in-depth as I get with Sophie these days. I find out more what she's thinking when I drive the soccer carpool. So Sophie plays soccer, and there's a carpool, so I'll be in the car driving 5 or 6 14-year-old girls, all of whom are texting, talking, singing, sending each other photos, even though they're sitting next to each other in the same car. And what I found is, like, I am not really part of their world at all. Not even they're not even aware that I'm there. They don't really, I don't think, know that there's anyone driving the car, because they're so busy in their world. And if every now and then I make the mistake of saying something like, "What was that?" There's like this momentary break. You know, the space-time continuum is shaken for the 14-year-olds. Oh, him, and then they go back to the. So I think they would be happiest if I didn't actually sit in the car, but ran along next to it by steering with my hand through the window. But that's not the bad part. And the bad part is boys. They didn't used to be part of our lives, and now they are, boys. And they show up. They show up, they're on the lawn, they're on the roof, they're in the trees, they're like squirrels. And the thing is, and I say this with all due respect to the boys in this room, they're scum. I know this because I've been a male my entire life. I know how we think, okay? And I don't want anybody thinking that around my daughter. So my idea would be, and Mark mentioned this, a trap, a steel trap, a humane trap, don't get me wrong. But a big trap that would sit on the lawn, baited with something that would attract teenage boys, like fireworks or video games, something stupid. And when I hear it clang shut, the trap, I would go out, and there'd be the boy in the trap, and I would drive him out to the Everglades and release him in a humane manner. But my wife, Michelle, who is a woman and has been a woman her entire life, and therefore has no idea what is actually going on, lets them into the house. And so I'll come through the house, and there'll be Sophie and a boy in the family, sitting in the TV room. And I'm probably the only person in Miami who does not own a firearm. But I would like to get one. Not to shoot I would never shoot anybody, okay? But just to walk through the TV room with. And maybe every now and then accidentally discharge it into the ceiling so the boy would understand two things. One, I have a firearm, and two, I do not have complete control over it. So if you want to put yourself up for adoption, just let me know. So the thing is, though, I love Sophie. I love, and I proved it. Mark also mentioned this. I took her to a Justin Bieber concert last year at the American Airlines Arena. That was back when Sophie was 13, and she loved Justin Bieber. She had a room, a part of her room called the Corner of Appreciation, that had pictures of Justin Bieber, and she talked about Justin Bieber all the time. And I'm sure she remembers this conversation. I said to her one time, being the dad, I said, Justin Bieber has no idea who you are. And she said, not yet. Which is the last thing you want to hear your daughter say. But anyway, she's over Justin Bieber now. She doesn't like him anymore. Now she likes something called One Direction, which is in a way worse because there's 5 of them. But we went to a concert, a Justin Bieber concert. Sophie and her friend Stella Sable. I see Stella's dad over there, Andy Sable, my colonoscopy expert. If you need any work done, he's the man. He'll do it right here. He needs the work, and he's ready to go. No, I'm kidding. But so Sophie and Stella had this plan, which was that they were gonna invite Justin Bieber to their bat mitzvahs. I'm not kidding. So because last year was their bat mitzvah year. So they brought their invitations and they wrote, I heart you, Justin. Please come to my bat mitzvah. And anyway, so we're there, and I'd say there's 17,000 people in the American Airlines Arena, of whom maybe 8 were dads. We're the ones that's like this, And then there's all these girls screaming. It's the loudest thing I've ever. I was in Hurricane Andrew. Went right over my house, and there was a girl sitting to my right who, all by herself, was louder than Hurricane Andrew all night long. All night long, I love you, right in my ear. And it's not me that she was talking to either. It was Justin Bieber. And here's the thing. I'm gonna sound like an old fart here, but when I was young and went to concerts right after the Civil War ended. Now back during the 60s, 70s, I used to go to rock concerts, and the band held still. Like if you went to see the Rolling Stones, they didn't move around. They were plugged into their instruments. Plus, I don't think Keith could move if he wanted to, So they play, and you could keep an eye on the band. Mick Jagger kind of run around, but the Stones were pretty much in one place. Or you go to see Gladys Knight and the Pips. And Gladys she'd stand there and sing. She was a good singer. She's saying the Pips would move some, like maybe 3 yards this way, 3 yards. Pips had maybe a 6-yard range. Call it the Pip range. But that was it. So you can focus. Justin Bieber, it's like going to a track meet. He comes out of the sky on a wire to start the concert, which didn't break, tragically, because then we could have gotten out of there right then. No, that would be wrong, wouldn't it? And then he is joined on the stage by these dancers. There's like a dozen of them. And the whole night long, they're sprinting around. They're sprinting over there. They're sprinting over there. He's up on a thing. He's on another thing. Everybody's running around the whole time to distract you from the fact that the music sucks, is what I think. But the point is, every time he would run by, so loud it was almost unbearable. And then at one point, the loudest it got was when he took off his shirt. Justin Bieber, which I don't know why he did, because he has exactly the same physique as the Geico Gecko. But anyway, so that was another essay. Then there's but they're not all about Sophie. Okay, Sophie, I'm all done with your part now. You can relax. I wrote an essay about aging and death, because I'm a baby boomer, and we like to think that whatever we're going through is the first time anybody ever went through it. Like when we had babies, we were the first humans ever to do it, and we wrote about it, and we talked about it, and we invented natural child. And now you're going to hear a lot about us aging and dying. Get used to it, people. Because we're the boomers, and we're the first generation ever to die. And the beginning of the end, Mark referred to this, the beginning of the end, when you begin to realize you're really getting old is when you turn 50 and you get a letter from ARP. ARP is, of course, the last sound you make before you die. ARP! You know. Hurry, doctor, he's ARPing over here. But it's also an acronym, stands for the American Association of People, Retired People Standing in Line Ahead of You, asking for a discount on every freaking thing. But anyway, so I talk about that, and I'm going to read just something about aging in a little while. But and also, one of the things, I plan my funeral. My whole funeral plan is in the book, laid out step by step what I want done. I think that's a courtesy to the people who survive you. My funeral is going to begin with mimes. There's going to be mimes coming down the church aisle, just like this, carrying a casket. And the reason we're going to use mimes is there's no casket. They're just miming that they have a casket. And they'll mime setting it down. And then I'm not sure what they'll do. If they start doing this thing, I'm going to have a sniper on hand. And then I'm going to have a clergyman come up and give a nice 15-minute moving talk about the benefits of Amway distributorship. Anyway, that's my whole funeral is in there. I have another essay on men and what men think as opposed to what women think. And I have a really simple theory about this, and it's that men think very little. Women think a lot, and men do not think that much at all. And that's when women always say, "Why don't you ever share anything?" It's because we don't have anything to share. If you were to look in the brains of the men in this audience right now, many of them are just going, But women are always like wanting us to have thoughts. Like, what are you thinking? Go, nothing. Well, who is she? Because they assume something is going on there. Like if you had a woman, women can't not think. Women think, I know this from my wife, so they just think all the time. You cannot stop. If you have a man and a woman sitting in a room like together, on a sofa, let's say, for half an hour. And that half hour, that woman will have like 10,000 thoughts. She'll go, well, why did she say that to me? Well, maybe it's because I said that to her. Well, I had to tell her that because I didn't know what else was going on. And each thought spurs more thoughts and more thoughts. There's like nuclear reaction of thoughts going on. Like her head is like exploding with thoughts. In that same half hour, the man might have one coherent thought. It'll be something along the lines of, my balls itch. So there's that. I have an essay in here on grammar, and that probably doesn't sound like a humor topic, but it's related to a column that I used to write regularly when I was writing columns regularly. Every 6 months or so, I would do a column called Ask Mr. Language Person, which was a Q&A column with Mr. Language Person as this expert. And the joke was, I would make up the questions and then I would answer them. The joke was that Mr. Language Person was always completely wrong. He never got any answer right. His advice was horrible. So this would be a column just riddled with errors. There would be like 100 mistakes in grammar in this column. And what I really liked about Mr. Language Person was the mail that he got from people I like to call the humor impaired, who didn't recognize that it was a joke. And the letters would always be very angry and say, before you go passing yourself off as an expert on grammar, perhaps you should check your own grammar. And they would have circled 2 errors out of 100 in the... I have another essay in the book on how to be a professional author. And if you're a writer, you're always getting asked, how do I become an author? I want to be an author. How do I do it? So I wrote this essay for them. And boy, are they going to be sorry if they ever follow any of the advice in it. That's all I have to say about it. I have an essay about manliness in the book. My premise is that modern guys like me are not as manly and not as capable as the men who preceded us, my parents' generation, their parents. I base a lot of it on my own father. My father was a Presbyterian minister I grew up in a little town called Armonk, New York, and he was not trained in any kind of physical. He was a minister. He had no training in carpentry or plumbing, but he built our house. The house I grew up in, my dad built it with his hands. He dug the foundation, put up the walls, nailed on the roofs. My memories of childhood are my dad always working on the house every weekend and at nights. It's like, it was not a great house. It had error problems in it, but you know, he built it. And I'm thinking, like, I couldn't in a million years do that. Like, I consider myself to have really accomplished something major when I successfully install an app on my phone. And whoa, you know, and so I wrote an essay about about how we can get back to learning to do manly things. Like, what would you do if you were lost in the wilderness? What would you do? How do you handle that situation? And I'll give you the quick version of that one. If you get lost in the wilderness anywhere in North America, just start running and screaming in any direction, and in 20 minutes you'll come to a Starbucks. I also talk about how you can be manly in your attire. There's a section on how to dress like a man, and my big point there is that you can't wear capri pants. And every 6 months, the fashion industry, the New York Times in particular, has an article where they declare that capri pants are going to be in for men. And there's always a picture of some guys wearing capri pants. But they're models. They're paid to do it. Even they don't look happy. You know, they're like, you know, in their capri pants. And some people say, well, you know, there are countries where men wear capri pants. And I go, yeah, but none of those countries has ever won a war. So anyway, I'm going to read you a couple of excerpts from my book. The first one is from the essay on aging, and this actually happened. My wife Michelle will back me up on this because she was there when it happened. This is one of those aging things, and I'm talking in this part of the essay about how one of the bad things that happens to you when you turn, you know, well in my case 60, you forget a lot of stuff. You're not as good with memories. So I'm talking about memory. I'm not kidding about the forgetfulness. Here's a recent example. Every morning after I feed in this order the tropical fish, the dog, and my daughter, I go out and get the newspaper. Every morning I have done this for centuries. So one recent morning I was in the kitchen and the various pets and offspring were eating breakfast. And I said to my wife, quote, "I'm going out to get the newspaper." My wife gave me a look and said, "You already got the newspaper." She then pointed to the newspaper, which she was reading. It was lying on the kitchen counter where I had just placed it after bringing it in from outside. So I said, quote, "Ha ha," indicating that I was not at all alarmed by this minor brain fart, that in no way meant I was well along the road to becoming a drooling fossil doddering around with poop in his undershorts. Then I poured myself a cup of coffee. Then, this was at most 90 seconds later, I thought to myself, quote, "Hey, I need to go get the newspaper." So I went to the front door, opened it, and stepped outside. It was only then that I remembered that I had just made a fool of myself by declaring to my wife, who was reading the newspaper that I had just brought inside, that I was going outside to get the newspaper. I turned around and saw that my wife was watching me. This was a tricky moment, a moment when quick thinking was required to establish that I had not morphed into the late Walter Brennan, who, for you younger readers, was an actor who portrayed a fantastically old rural coot on an early 60s TV sitcom called The Real McCoys. Here is what the shriveled husk of what was once my brain came up with for me to say as I stood there in the doorway, looking at my wife, looking at me. Quote, "I'm just checking the weather. It's gonna be warm." This was a statement of spectacular idiocy. We live in South Florida. It has been warm here for 530 million consecutive years. Going outside to see if this trend is continuing, especially if you have just been outside, is not unlike randomly jumping into the air every few seconds to determine whether gravity is still working. My wife, to her credit, resisted the urge to say anything. And there are definitely things she could have said, such as, "Have you also pooped your underwear?" Later that day, however, out of the blue, she said, "You aren't checking the weather." "No," I admitted, "I'm going senile." Then we both laughed, but not that hard. The next line is, "Speaking of not that hard, I hate Viagra." And then I have an essay on Viagra commercials and why I don't like them, which I won't go into. I'll just deliver the essence of it. First of all, nobody wants to see Viagra commercials. I don't know who in the world they think wants to see commercials for that on, while you're watching television with your family. But I'll set that aside. It's the commercials themselves that I find really offensive because of the way they portray older guys, people like me. The one that I really go off on in the book is the one, you've probably seen it, was in heavy rotation for a while. There's a rangy older cowboy, lean guy driving a battered old pickup truck out west somewhere, towing a trailer with 2 horses in it. You know the one I'm talking about? And he gets stuck with his. And then the announcer says the following: "You've reached the age where you don't back down from a challenge." That is such a crock. The whole beauty of being this age is you back right down from a challenge. We older guys we're not stupid anymore, so we just back right down from challenges. If you have any doubt about that, the proof can be found. Go to YouTube and search for any combination of the following phrase: "shoot bottle rockets out of ass." You will find there are hundreds of videos of guys doing exactly that. All of them are young guys. None of them are older guys. Why are they doing it? Because they were challenged to do it. "I bet you can't shoot a bottle rocket." Yes, I can. Only young men are that stupid. Older men go, "I don't want to go to the emergency room and explain these, 3rd-degree burns on my buttocks, You shoot a bottle rocket." So anyway, I don't like that. But anyway, this is supposed to be a metaphor for Viagra, and he solves the problem by hitching the horses to his truck and pulls them out. Then he has sex with his horses, I guess, because he's such a stud. No, we don't know that he does that, but it does get lonely out there. There's no women in the commercial. Anyway, so the other essay I'm going to read you a little excerpt from is about air travel. I have an essay on air travel, because I fly a lot, and I'm always kind of noticing things. I think there must be like some kind of giant IQ reduction ray beaming down on all the airports in the country, because people get unbelievably stupid when they're in an airport and have to get on a plane. Things that you would not think would be that complicated to them, such as, how many is 2? They make a big point of this when you get on a plane. You can bring 2 things on the plane. 2. And they say that 100 times. But inevitably, there are people come up with 4 things. And they say, you can't bring 4 things on the plane. You have to bring 2 things. And they go, but I have 4 things, It's incredibly complicated. It's almost as complicated as finding a seat on an airplane. When you have a ticket that's like 23A, and you're standing in front of row 11, what do you do? Just stand there. Anyway, I wrote a Q&A to explain air travel for people who don't do it a lot. And here's the section on airport security. What are the do's and don'ts of airport security screening? We'll start with a do. Relax. Airport security is handled by the Transportation Security Administration, which is an agency of the federal government. Motto, a gigantic impersonal bureaucracy working for you. Some TSA procedures may seem ridiculous, but remember this: there are real terrorists out there, and it's the TSA's job to make sure that these terrorists do not get on an airplane until they have fully complied with TSA procedures. Fact, no terrorist has ever boarded a domestic flight with more than 3.4 ounces of toothpaste, as far as we know. Make sure your carry-on luggage does not contain any prohibited items, including liquids, gels, gases, or solids. If you plan to wear underwear, wear it on the outside of your other garments so that it is clearly visible to the TSA agents. Remove all shoes, belts, sweaters, coats, hats, wigs, eyeglasses, contact lenses, hearing aids, insulin pumps, artificial limbs, pacemakers, and donated organs such as kidneys, and place these in the bins provided. Then shuffle or crawl slowly forward in the security line with your head down, taking care not to appear suspicious or make eye contact with anybody. The heart of the screening procedure is when you go into the scanner, which sounds scary, although in fact it's nothing more than a giant microwave oven that bombards your body with atomic radiation. But there's no need to worry. The scanner is completely safe for humans as long as A, you do not remain in there longer than the recommended 0.8 of a second, and B, TSA agents have remembered to change the power setting from popcorn back to humans after their break. The scanner serves a vital security function. It sees through your clothing and captures an image of your naked body, which is transmitted to a room where specially trained TSA agents decide whether to post it on Facebook. If you would prefer not to have this happen, simply ask to have an agent grope your genitals manually. It's your right. So, anyway, that's that'll give you an idea of the level of informative content in the book. I would be happy to take your questions on, I don't know, there's no microphones, you can just probably just raise your hand and yell it out if you have a question, or did I cover everything? Okay, any problems at home you'd like to share with the group? Really, nobody has any questions at all? Are you just afraid to ask? Yeah?
I've got a question.
Okay.
Did you always want to be a journalist?
Did I always want to be a journalist? Do you think I'm a journalist? No, I didn't. I was an English major, and so I had no useful skills when I got out of college. And I wanted to write, so I got a job. My first newspaper job was with a newspaper called the Daily Local News in Westchester, Pennsylvania, which was just what it sounds like, daily local news. Daily, except unless you count Sunday as a day, because we didn't come out on Sunday. The Daily Local, it was not probably the highest quality of journalism. While I was there, once ran a headline that said, "Woman beats off would-be rapist." We did. I'm not making that up. But it was a great experience for me because they let me do whatever I wanted. I mean, as long as I covered whatever I was supposed to cover. I mean, I covered I covered municipal meetings that are still going on. And I wrote long stories about sewage and stuff. I didn't know anything about it, but I'm sure nobody read these stories, so it didn't really matter. But when I was done with my assignments, I could write. They would let you write a column, so I started writing a humor column back in this would be the early 70s, and I thought it was pretty funny. And this is my first memory of something that was to happen to me a lot over the years. My third column. Okay, I've written now 3 total humor columns in my life that have appeared in a newspaper. And it happens to be that the day that ran was also the Christmas party, the Daily Local News Christmas party. So we're in this bar called Joe's Sportsman's Lounge, which is where they held the Christmas party. And my editor came up and said, "You're not as funny as you used to be." That was the third column. And that was many years ago. I've heard that a lot but that was the first time I heard it, so I was a little distressed. But anyway, I sort of stayed with it, ended up at the Miami Herald, but by then I wasn't really committing journalism anymore. I was just writing humor columns. So.
What are you planning for your next book?
What am I planning for my next book? If I survive this book tour, I'm going to write another book of essays. I've got a whole series of things that I want to write about, which is an incredible answer, but short of telling you what they are, which would be just a list of books, Oh, the only one I'll tell you that I actually know I'm definitely going to do, I got Google Glass. You know what that is? I got that. So I'm going to write about that. Already I've that it transforms you from like just a regular person with no access to information into an unbelievable dork, you know. But that's all I know so far. Any other? Yeah.
Have you ever spoken in a foreign country where the audience just didn't get it?
I've spoken in many domestic American cities where the audience didn't always get it. I once spoke, this is true, I once spoke to the American Association of Casket Manufacturers. And I don't know why they asked me to do it, you know. I don't know why they there and stabbed themselves in the eyeball with forks for all the enjoyment they got out of my presentation. I had some casket material, but they didn't find it humorous at all, you know. The mime joke, you know, they wouldn't like that, you know. Not at all, not at all. No, I don't speak on foreign countries. I mean, I do speak when I'm in foreign countries, but it's usually stuff like, you know, can I have the bill, please? You know, but I've never spoken, you know, to well, England. I went to England. That's kind of a foreign country. And what's interesting because they don't, you know, the Brits think we're idiots. You know, let's be honest. They think Americans are kind of idiots, especially in the humor department. They feel that they are very sophisticated. But some book reviewer who didn't work for the New York Times, but they had her write a review, wrote, Dave Barry is the funniest man in America. You know, this is like in the 80s. That me, it's like stuck to me like a leech, you know. The New York Times, Dave Barry's so England, I'm on a book tour. I'm in England, you know, and in England, the way you go on a book tour is you go on BBC shows. You know, they don't do a lot of live events like this. It's mostly, and so you get in a car, you go to into this labyrinthine BBC building, and you sit in a little studio with a guy who went to like, you know, Oxford, who interviews you, and then you go out and get in a car and drive for like 3 hours and get back to what appears to be the same building, and go into another little place, probably next door to the first guy. They just drive you around for a while, you know. But same, because they would look at the book. They were looking at the book. So they were looking at like, you know, a maggot, you know, a big maggot. You know, our next guest has been described as the funniest man in America. We'll see about that. No, they didn't actually. They didn't say that last part, but it's very intimidating. You know, I'm doing, you know, like booger joke humor over there. But anyway, I did meet Tony Curtis. You know, people you never know shows up. There was like some round table. You know, I never know who anybody is. They're all famous Brit, you know, journalists. And all of a sudden, Tony Curtis shows up wearing shorts and a, you know, and a T-shirt and sits down. I don't know why I'm telling you this. It's just remembering it. It's all coming back to me now. Anyway, yeah.
Have you thought about writing any books for young children? Do you think they would get you?
Have I thought about writing any books for young children? Do I think they would get me? Well, I wrote a series of books with a guy named Ridley Pearson, who was called Peter and the Starcatchers. Well, the first book was called Peter and the Starcatchers, and it was a prequel to Peter Pan. Ridley was reading Peter Pan to his daughter, who was then 6 years old, and she asked him, how did Peter Pan meet Captain Hook? And really thought about it. And then the next week he was staying at our house because he plays in this band of authors called the Rock Bottom Remainders that I'm in. And he said, you know, Paige asked me this question. I thought it might be a cool little story. So we thought we were going to write a little, you know, short book, and we didn't even know who was going to publish it. And Disney ended up publishing it. It ended up being 500 pages, and we ended up writing five of them all together. And the first one became a Broadway play, which is now traveling. It won some Tony Awards, and now it's traveling around the country. We don't know where it is. We've asked the police to. Where it's on a milk carton. Where is the play? No, but anyway. So the answer to the question is yes. But it was kind of young adult fiction. It was more aimed at, like, I don't know, the youngest kids who were reading it were 8 or 9 years old. I do have in my in this book a little section on how to write for children, and it's basically the premise is that it's really easy. That, you know, in about an hour a year you can write a children's books. Mine is called. I put one in there. It's called Merle the Moth Does a Big Thing, and it's really stupid. I urge you to read it. Yes.
Besides yourself, who are some of your favorite humorists?
Living would be Carl Hyacin. I love Carl. Thank you. Well, Carl once played. He has played actually a couple of times with the band, the Rock Bottom Remainders. And what's funny about Carl is he's brilliant. I mean, he's really, really, really good at what he does. He's a very talented guy, but he's terrible at music. But he loves music. He wants to be good at music. And so some years ago, he decided to get a guitar. I actually went with him to buy the guitar myself. And here's the level of Carl's knowledge of music. I said, what kind of guitar? I went through there's hollow body, there's, solid body, there's this, there's that. What kind of guitar do you want? And he goes, I think a red one. So gave Carl his guitar. He was looking at keys at the time. There was a guy out there, was a good guitar teacher, and he gave Carl lessons. And Carl studied guitar for a long time. And finally becomes, the money over rolls around, the Rangers usually play there. And I asked Carl, you want to come play with us? Be on stage with us? He goes, yeah, cool. And I was very excited, and he shows up. Next one, the two hands go all night long. Right? You didn't hear the teacher yelling chorus. A, E, O, and then like half a second later, you'd hear Carl switch to the new chord, So anyway, but I like Carl like Roy Blunt Jr., who's also in the rock band. He in fact named our genre, which is hard listening music. Yes, sir.
Who's your favorite politician? Pumping station they named after.
Okay, I heard two questions. Okay, well, go ahead. Now you have to talk because you heard they said something. Pumping station.
Who's your favorite politician?
Well, right now, that's an easy one. Rob Ford, mayor of Toronto. We need to change the Constitution so that man can be president of the United States, because I would never have to even work again, man. It would be, I love Rob Ford. Any man who says his excuse for smoking crack was that he was drunk is my kind of politician. Yeah. There was a gentleman. I'm one of the few people I know anyway. I wrote a column once making fun of North Dakota, and they got even with me. Don't mess with North Dakota. That's the lesson here. Yeah. I noticed you're not there at the moment, but no, it's a wonderful place, North Dakota. But I made fun of them, and they got even with me. They invited me up there in January. And they dedicated a sewage lifting station in my honor. Sarah, this is true. If you go to Grand Forks, North Dakota, for any reason, such as your plane has crashed there, there is a sewage lifting station and a big brick building, and on it in foot-high letters it says Dave Barry Lift Station number 16. Seriously, and inside is the equipment that lifts the sewage, which is a concept I do not understand. I would leave the sewage down there. But in North Dakota, they lift it. That's how bored they are. But they actually had this ceremony. They put a brown piece of paper over the sign on the outside, and then they had this. A lot of people came for this. The media were there, and it was really cold. It was like really, really cold. And the mayor of Grand Forks read a proclamation very eloquently comparing my work to the production of human excrement. And then at the big moment, they had me tear down the piece of paper. And I remember seeing my name on the side of this building and smelling the sewage in the cold North Dakota air and hearing whoop, 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 which is the sound of people applauding in mittens. To answer your question, I have not gone back to North Dakota. I'll take a couple more. Yeah.
Your family noticed you went from the bank. How do they feel about you writing the numerous stories about
Well, we could ask her. She's right here. And I am actually going to bring Sophie up in a minute. But my feeling about that is, I'd be happy to stop writing about my family if my daughter wants to pay for her own college education. I find, but otherwise, Daddy needs material. The way I look at it. Yes, sir.
You excited about the return of Jack Bauer?
I am. So I'm excited about the return of Jack Bauer. I'm part of a community of people who are semi-obsessed with 24, the world's least realistic action show. I don't know if they're ever going to top the episode where Rodman has the White House from underneath. A lot of people don't realize this. You can jump in the Potomac River, swim under the White House, and come right up in the White House. They did that on 24. So anyway, I blog it live, or have anyway, and it's a very funny community of people joining in and mocking it, and the rest of you, they're all falling asleep. They don't even know what I'm talking about. Maybe one more, yeah.
What did your preacher father think of your humor?
My what?
What did your preacher father think of your humor?
What did my preacher father think of my humor? My dad was a pretty funny guy, and the reason, the real reason I have a sense of humor, the kind of humor, the sense of humor that I have, is because of my mom, and the reason he married her, I think, was the same sense of humor. My mom had a very edgy sense of humor. I mean, she was a housewife. This is in the 50s in Armonk, New York. She was a housewife. She raised 4 kids, and she was different from the other moms in a number of ways. And I'll give you a couple of examples. My mom did not hold anything sacred at all, anything. And like this is a very trivial example. My sister and I would be going out to go swimming. There's a lake near our house, and my mom would open the kitchen window, and call out in this June Cleaver voice, "Don't drown, kids!" And we go, "We won't," and she would sometimes take us down to the village of Armonk. Armonk then, now it's this kind of, Tony suburb, but then it was a real little village, and she would take us down almost every day. You would go to the Brassetti's for the butcher, and Louis the cleaner, and go around do her errands. And the tradesmen all loved her. They loved her. And I remember we go into Brassetti's market, and Ray Brassetti being in the corner slicing bologna or whatever, and you go, "How you doing, Marion?" And she'd go, "Just shitty, Ray." And all the other moms would swirl around But I'll give you this is my final example, and this is going to sound almost weird, but this is how she was. She just was not, she would never ever let up. I mean, she could find humor anywhere. It is going to sound terrible maybe, but if you knew my mom, it wouldn't. When my dad died, we had a funeral service for him, and we had his ashes in a box, and we took them to my sister, my 2 brothers, and me, and my mom went out to the Middle Patton Cemetery to bury my dad. So it's and it's raining. It's like we're all crying, weeping. We put the box in, we say some stuff, we hug each other. Then we're walking away, and I got my mom on my arm, and we're walking in the rain, and she looks down, and she reads a headstone and goes, "So that's why we don't see him anymore." Even then, and that was my mother. So I grew up in that environment where there was just nothing that you couldn't make a joke about, and so I owe my career to her. All right, well, thank you all so much. Wait! Sophie, come up here. This is my daughter, Sophie, and I made so much fun of her. And this is so important to her, she's not even on her phone right now, but Sophie goes to Carver Middle School. This is like a shameless appeal from a dad. Yeah, Carver Middle School. So it's a wonderful public school near here, and she just was part of a project that won this big award from Samsung. There were 2,300 schools throughout the country competing, and there ended up being 15 finalists, and Carver's one of them, and Sophie's part of it. And part of it is voting for Carver. And so if you come by to get a book signed, please don't feel obligated, but if you do, Sophie's going to hand you this, which will tell you how you can vote for Carver. And if you don't vote for Carver, then we might lose to a school in Montana, and that would be I would kill myself. If that, no, anyway, if you're interested, this will explain how to vote for Carver. Anyway, thank you, Sophie. Thank you. Hey, where do you want me to sign?
It's going to be back in the fellowship hall.
Oh, okay. The books are for sale? That's where.
Sorry, we were supposed to give them away. But anyway, the books are for sale at Fellowship Hall, and they will be signed.